The topic today that we're going to be talking about is get hired on the fast track to promotion in clinical research. And I'm so honored to be able to interview Kenyetta Sims. Kenyetta is the Director of Clinical Research at Howard Brown Health in Chicago, Illinois. And Kenyetta, I'm going to be asking you questions today, and we're going to be taking questions from the audience as well. And it's going to be a pretty fast-paced conversation. But before you get started, I actually want to introduce myself and who I am and why I got into clinical research. Now, I was working in a really exciting field in education. I was training doctors and nurses in medical aesthetic procedures for a long time, but I always wanted to do more with my career. Medical aesthetics was not my passion, but I sort of fell into that and was very successful in those training programs that we were developing, training doctors and nurses and technicians. And then 9 years ago, my mom passed away with Alzheimer's, and it was a really trying time in our family's life, and going through the relationship with someone with Alzheimer's is so heart-wrenching and challenging. And at that time I realized I want to do more with my career. I didn't want to be training in medical aesthetics. I wanted to do something where I felt I was going to be impacting the health and well-being of people in a greater way. And I'm so ecstatic that I found clinical research, and I've been able to now develop training programs in clinical research to help people enter the field. And so that's what I do. My name is David Silberman. I am the CEO and co-founder of Clinical Research Fastrack. And today we're going to talk to everyone in our audience about how we can help them get hired and on the fast track to promotion in clinical research. And I'm so excited today to have Kenyetta Sims from Howard Brown Health, the Director of Clinical Research. Wow. Kenyetta, can you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us what you do and how you got into clinical research.
Okay, I'm Kenyetta Sims, and I relocated here to Chicago. What I'm currently doing within clinical research is we primarily do infectious disease studies, primarily HIV and AIDS, and we also go into other infectious disease, STIs or STDs, sexually transmitted diseases or infections. We also do device studies as well as drug studies, and primarily our focus is to help the whole spectrum of the population. So anywhere from patients who are newly diagnosed and needing to start on therapy, or they may have full-blown AIDS. And basically we administer investigational drugs and or devices to our patients to better the quality of their life, to sometimes save lives, to sometimes prolong lives. So that is primarily what we do here. I am a certified coordinator, so in addition to being a director and doing a lot of administrative and executive work, I also do have coordinator skills, and I started here as a coordinator.
And you've worked your way up, and I know how hardworking you are, and I had the great opportunity to come visit you in Chicago. But yes, why don't you tell everyone, first of all, how we met? It's a really exciting story because it was a graduate of our program that lived in Chicago that you hired. Can you tell that story?
Yes, so I was looking for a new coordinator. I needed someone that had experience training on some level. It is very difficult to penetrate the industry. However, it is also very difficult to find trained and or experienced folks in the industry. So as I was looking at resumes, I came across a resume on our system, and that was someone who had done a pretty intense training, and it sparked my interest, being that I've been doing research for a while now. And I thought I had heard of all the trainings that, exist that were pretty intense. And I was very impressed at the fact that she was able to get some hands-on experience up front. and that she was very knowledgeable about regulations. She was very knowledgeable about GCP, about processes like informed consent. And then she had an educational background that was medical. So that was very, enticing to me. And I immediately wanted to interview her. And upon the first interview, it went very well. She seemed very knowledgeable about research and about processes involving clinical trials, phases 1 through 4. And so the next step was to interview again, and everyone on the team loved her. And we decided to bring her aboard. And it was primarily because she had done the Fastrack training, and it allowed me to not have to train her so much on research, but I could focus on the disease sets that we were working on our mission here at the organization and our focus. And so that was very helpful. So for me, it usually takes 1 year to train a coordinator.
1 whole year? Oh my gosh.
An entire year on the job. And with Patrice, we were done within 6 months.
Oh,
and
so it cut
first
your
story.
onboarding time in half.
Yes.
Saved your organization significant time, resources, and money, I imagine. Wow.
Yes.
That was so great. And then just to complete that story, then you invited our team to come out and train your principal investigators, your doctors as well. And I had the opportunity to be there, which was so exciting. But let's take a step back, because we have so many people on this webinar. And what I wanted to do was have you just explain, first of all, what is clinical research? Can you explain to our audience, just so we have the same foundation baseline for everyone?
Yes, clinical research is basically any kind of research that involves human subjects or human subject data that has some component to it that is scientific or medical. And basically, it generally involves trials, but it can also involve observational studies, epidemiological studies, or clinical trials. So basically, any research that involves something medical or clinical, usually involving a device or a drug, or around a device and a drug.
Yeah, and one of the key factors is it's with patients. So. Yes. So we have a lot of people saying, I've done research before. Why aren't I getting a job? I'm applying because in college I had a big research project, or they work in a lab doing lab research, or maybe they have biotech training. We talk to so many people with different types of research training, but they haven't actually worked on clinical trials with human subjects. And when you're working with people, Kenyetta, aren't there a lot more rules and regulations that need to be followed?
Yes, there are lots of rules and regulations when you're working with human subjects, and there are lots of regulations that have to be followed by separate entities. So you have, different bodies that, depending on what kind of research you're doing or what kind of drug and device you're utilizing, then it spans out to even more entities that are regulating bodies. And it is very helpful if someone has experience, because it sometimes can be difficult to engage in learning how to deal with people and learning how to conduct research.
Right. And so I think that's the first main point that everyone needs to know is clinical research is very different from lab research. And it's different from just standard of care medicine. So someone thinks they have a medical degree, that doesn't mean they're going to be knowledgeable in clinical research. Or if someone has lab experience, that doesn't mean they're going to be knowledgeable in clinical research. And so what we try to do in our program is train in the regulations, the policies, the procedures, the protocols, the SOP of clinical research. And there's a lot to learn. We have a couple questions from the audience, and I just want to interject really quickly. And someone said, hey, without a medical background, is it possible to get into clinical research? Another person's asking, hey, I'm an RN, can I get in? And the answer to both is yes. You don't have to be a doctor or nurse, but if you have medical background, that's advantageous for sure. But also, really in the industry, we're always looking for people who know about clinical research already. Isn't that the case, Kenyetta?
Yes, it is. And I myself did not come from a medical background. I trained on the job, and all of the skills that I have now that are medical were on the job training. So you
Okay, wow.
get into research without having a medical background.
You've learned the medicine part, but
Mhm.
really, there's always a dilemma, and I've heard this from many directors of research and people who professionals in research, and the dilemma is always: is it better to have someone with therapeutic medical knowledge and then train them in the clinical research administrative side, or is it better for them to have the clinical research knowledge and then train them in the medical? And the reason is, well, you can do either, right?
Yes.
And sometimes you can do both. But what we train in our program at Fastrack is the language of clinical research. We train in the competencies that every clinical research needs to know, regardless of whether you're going to be a clinical research coordinator or a monitor or in regulatory or in other roles. Everyone needs to know the basic foundation of what a clinical trial is, how it's conducted, and all of the language that goes behind it. And as you said, it takes a year to really get someone up to speed at your facility?
Yes, it does.
Oh my gosh, wow. So tell the audience now, and this is really the question. I think everyone's like, what are you looking for when you're hiring for someone, when you're interviewing someone? What are some of the boxes you're trying to check off?
So some of the boxes, the first box is I would like for them to have clinical research knowledge. Like you said, it's almost a whole different language. And if you have that language, that knowledge, especially understanding of the acronyms, it becomes very helpful in not only in training, but in learning and then executing the actual conduct of studies. Even if you're only, like you said, if you're going to do regulatory or if you're going to be a CRA, it's very helpful because everyone uses the same jargon, and it can become a little monotonous if you have to stop and look up everything in every sentence or every time someone's asking you something. So I definitely look for that first, any knowledge that someone has. And then second, I look for experience. I want to know what kind of experience you have, because one of the biggest problems with clinical research is that folks think that, like you said, they've worked in a lab or they've worked in medical, and it's a combination of things, but it is not one thing. And then they get to clinical research and either find it very overwhelming because there's a lot to do, or they find that they're not good at interacting with human subjects. And so that is the next thing that I look for, that you've had some experience level with working with people and knowledge of understanding of some kind of testing or, investigational process.
Right. Wow. So there's really a lot to know about clinical research and about this field to have an edge in getting hired. And we have so many questions coming in. This is really exciting. Some people are asking, this one person is saying, I'm a cardiac sonographer. It's a 3-year associate's degree. Do I need a degree? And we get that question a lot. And the answer is, it depends. So someone who comes through our training with an associate's degree, you can take the fast track training, and it puts you ahead of many candidates because you have the knowledge and some experience, and you have that foundation of the competencies of clinical research, and that can help you get into the field. But, and this is what I say, but some people look for that bachelor's degree first, and it might disqualify you if you don't have a bachelor's degree. Now, we've had many students with associate's degrees to come through our program and to move into the field. And that's a minimum requirement of our program. You have to have at least an associate's degree, or if you're an LVN or a medical assistant, you can be a good candidate without having a bachelor's. But we also have people who take our class, and I saw one of the questions, Kenyetta, came from someone who's a foreign medical graduate, and foreign medical graduates are great candidates because they have a lot of medical knowledge. Once they learn from us the clinical research part, then they can make a fabulous candidate. As long as, for all of you foreign medical grads out there, just remember, clinical research is not the practice of medicine. It's very different. Can you explain pretty quickly, what's the difference between research and then medicine?
The big difference between research and medicine, in research, you're trying to get to an answer. And I think in medicine, you're trying to get to a diagnosis and treat. So we are actually trying to get to an answer. We're doing various things to get there. We're asking various questions. We're going through various steps. And it's all very regimented, and we're not stepping outside of those bounds. Whereas in medicine, you may take multiple different ways to get to a diagnosis and how to treat the patient.
Really great explanation. Thank you. And so in clinical research, we are trying to really understand and answer those questions of, is this treatment that we're testing, is it going to be safe? First of all, safety is the most important. And then efficacy. Will it be an effective treatment? And we go through the phases of the clinical trial, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and ultimately FDA approval. And some of these drugs or devices or therapies that are being approved are life-saving and life-changing. Have you worked on any treatments yourself that are have changed people's lives?
Yes, I have. I've worked on several drugs with patients across a few therapeutic areas that include HIV, AIDS, multiple sclerosis, and even people with severe breathing difficulties or upper respiratory difficulties. And I've had the fortune in my career, which some coordinators don't, but I've been very fortunate that I've seen several drugs and devices actually go to the market after I have worked on them. So that is a luxury as a coordinator director, if you get to see the actual drug or device or therapy you're working on actually get FDA approval and actually be utilized, and you can see how it changes people's lives.
That is so exciting. And I wanted to interject real quickly that you have worked on some of these approved drugs and it's changing people's lives. But this is a real growing industry. And this is a chart from the FDA website. It's called clinicaltrials.gov, where we register all the clinical trials that are going on around the country and around the world. And the growth has been almost exponential in the number of trials being registered. Have you seen this before, Kenyetta?
I have not.
It's so exciting to see because this is a field that is booming right now. There's so much going on. Here's another chart from the FDA website, and it shows that last year in 2018, there were more drugs approved than ever before in our history. But if you look at this chart, in 2017, that was the biggest year, except for last year. And then back in 2015. So we're seeing this trend of more drugs being approved, of more treatments coming out, but there's also a need for more coordinators now. We need more people running trials. Someone asked the question, am I overqualified if I have a PhD, if I have a master's degree? And the answer is no. No. Clinical research is a wonderful field. We are investigating new treatments. I don't think anyone can be overqualified for this field. What's important is that you're curious and you're passionate and you're able to apply yourself, and you have the humility to work with both patients and doctors and a big team. Tell us about Howard Brown Health. You have a big team there that you work with?
I have a small team, I like to say, with a large impact. My team varies from medical assistants all the way through bachelor's, master's, and PhD. So I think that you can't be overqualified, but I do think that you have to be properly qualified. I think that you have to have the proper training and or experience depending on your degree level. We hire folks who come from a spectrum, especially if they have the experience training that we need. We're not necessarily going to disqualify someone because they have a PhD. Right,
right. So you're not overqualified, but you do have to be willing to do the work, to work hard, you have to be detail oriented, right? You have to have the right qualifications. Yes. You have to be able to work with people, because we're working with patients, we're working with doctors and nurses and PIs and all these different research staff. And then we're working with data and information. So you have to be able to work with data, and you got to be able to work with people. And some people, Some people are good at one or the other, but in this field, you really need both, don't you, Kenya?
Correct. Yes, you do. You need to be able to work with data. You need to be able to work with actual people. And that goes as far as the patients or the human subjects and or team members. If you are working in a clinical setting, doing clinical trials, then you are in a clinic setting or a hospital setting, and you have to be able to interact with multiple people. You have multiple needs across the trial. So you have to be able to interact within your organization or your group in order to get a lot of functions done.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. It's from Philip. And Philip says, I have a master's in health informatics. Will you hire me? And the answer is maybe. So first you have a master's degree, which is great. Then you're going to need some training and experience in clinical research. So you may need a program like ours. So you need a little more. Just health informatics, it probably isn't enough. And then when you go through the interview, we got to make sure that you're detail oriented and you work well with people. And if you put all that together, you are going to be an amazing candidate. And I want to share my screen one more time because we saw the slide about more drug approvals, the growth in the industry. This is a big $150 billion industry in clinical research alone, and it's part of the global pharmaceutical industry. So if we think about the pharmaceutical industry and you think of these big companies like Eli Lilly and Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline and Bristol Myers Squibb, and many of our graduates are working at some of these companies. That is $1 trillion industry. There's a lot of investment going into finding new treatments for things like cancer and for heart disease, for mental illness. And then Kenyetta, you're focusing primarily just on HIV, is that right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and you're part of Howard Brown Health, which is a health system in Chicago. It's a rather large health system, isn't that correct?
Yes, it is. We are the largest LGBT health center in the Midwest. And we currently, throughout Chicago, have 13 locations.
Wow. Wow. So really, if you think about what Kenyetta is doing, is they're doing clinical trials on new medications and new treatments that can help not only the population that they're working with, but potentially people all over the country and all over the world. How exciting is that? Do you love your job, Kenyetta?
I do. I love this work. It has been very motivating and encouraging. It is nice to be able to see an endpoint and see someone turn around, even on paper or on a lab result, to see that someone is getting better, not only physically, but, in numbers and in health, and spirit and mind. It has been very life-changing, and it definitely is something that I recommend if you are a helper and you can multitask while prioritizing, as I like to say. This is definitely an excellent field to go into.
Wow. Well, I can say from my standpoint, being in an organization that's training and supporting and helping people get into the industry, I have never been happier. And I think I started out the webinar telling people about how I felt like I wanted more in my career. I wanted to feel that passion and that desire that makes you wake up every morning and say, wow, I'm so happy I'm going to work. I love going to work. And I told my kids this and they didn't like it. I was on vacation just the past couple of weeks. I went on vacation and I missed work. I wanted to be at work. How many people can say, wow, I wish I can come back from my vacation to go to work? It was a great vacation, by the way. It was a fantastic time. But when you love what you do, it really, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it absolutely wonderful?
It is. It's absolutely wonderful. And I think that if you have the dedication and there's so much to learn and there's so much to know, that if you also are a very curious person, it can be very fulfilling because you will always keep learning and there's always new things to try and to do once you get into the industry.
Wow. Wow. So people have been asking about our program and how it works, and I briefly want to share that information with everyone. So this is an exciting industry. There's all these unfilled positions in clinical research, and many people apply and they don't understand why they're not getting a call on that resume. They don't know why they're not getting hired. And there's some real challenges out there that we discussed. You need experience. We're working on these trials with human subjects, with real people. And so we don't want to hire people that don't understand the rules, the regulations, the safety procedures. We have to be safe in everything we do. And again, this isn't bench research, it's something different. So there are these challenges. And so in our program, we emphasize these keys to success. Of course, making connections in the industry. Quite frankly, with people like you, Kenyetta, we introduce our students to you. So instead of having to go through and you having to weed through all those resumes, we can make a strong referral. And a referral is a better pathway to getting an interview and hopefully ultimately a job. I know you don't hire everyone we refer, but you hired Patrice and you've hired others as well. And also experience is so key, and the experience that we provide in our program is something that can help people get in the field. And we have graduates working all over the country. And the interesting thing, I don't know if you know this, Kenyetta, is our graduates, many of them come to us in frustration because they were trying to get in the field and they couldn't. Then they take our class and it really opens up those doors. And why? Because they're prepared. They have the proper training. And someone asked the question, how do we support them? We help them with their resumes. We prepare them for their interviews. And we have instructors like you, Kenyetta, who's going to be teaching our class coming up in Chicago in September. The real world directors of research sites, the CRAs who are monitoring trials, the CRCs who are conducting trials are the teachers of our program. So they're providing real world experience. And for anyone out there, we're really coming up to the end of our time. Oh, I told you it would go fast. Can you believe we've already been talking for almost half an hour, Kenyetta?
Oh my goodness, no.
Yeah. So I'm just going to see if we can just take maybe one or two more questions. Someone said, I'm based in Toronto. Is Fastrack accepted here? So that's a really interesting thing. What we do is we train and prepare our students for the field and we introduce them. So as long as you have the right qualifications for our program, we can accept you into our program, but we train primarily in the United States. So we're going to be in Chicago in September. Next month, actually, we're going to be in Philadelphia. We're in Scottsdale, Arizona next month as well. So you can come to Arizona, Philadelphia, Chicago for any of these trainings that are coming up. And just give us a call and we can give you more information and more details. And oh my gosh, Kenyetta, we are out of time. But
okay, well, thank you for talking to me today.
I want to thank you so much because as the director of clinical research at Howard Brown Health, it's such an honor for me to be able to talk to you, to work with you, and now you're going to come and teach our students in September, and I am just overjoyed to be able to work together. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad you did. I enjoyed it too. And the beauty of this industry is we are so passionate about it. We have so much fun.
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot of hard work. You work hard, right?
Very hard.
I've never worked harder in my life, but I've never been.
Yes, I agree with that. I've never been happier, and we definitely work hard.
Wow. So for all of you out there who participated today, I want to say thank you for joining us on this webinar. There's so many of you from around the country, and it's been a pleasure for me to host. It's such an honor to be here with Kenyetta, and I'm in San Francisco. So from San Francisco.
And Chicago.
Thank you from Chicago, Kenyetta. It's great to have you. And for those of you who have more questions, please give us a call, 602-883-7944, or you can email us or go on our website for more information. And Kenyetta, thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.